So today, we're going to dive into what is, without a doubt, the darkest chapter in all of American history. I mean, this was a time when the nation literally declared war on itself, when the whole idea of the United States came this close to being wiped out for good. And you know, to really understand America today, you have to go back. You have to step into that darkness.
It all starts with just a number, 600,000. Just let that sink in for a second. 600,000. That was the price, over 4 unbelievably brutal years. The cost in American lives for a war fought right here on American soil.
But look, a number like that is just an abstraction, right? It's hard to even wrap your head around. The reality was a national horror story, literally written in blood. See, this wasn't some war fought against a faceless enemy in a faraway land. No, this was fought in our town squares, in our farm fields. It was a war inside of families, pitting brother against brother, father against son. I mean, can you even imagine?
So how? How could a nation do something like this to itself? Well, to figure that out, we have to cut through all the noise, all the debates that have gone on for over a century, and just face the one, single, horrifying cause at the absolute heart of it all.
And let's be really clear here. It wasn't about states' rights. It wasn't about some abstract economic disagreement. The historical record is crystal clear on this, and it all points to one single, undeniable answer. Slavery. That's it. That one word explains the entire catastrophe. The brutal, institutionalized enslavement of other human beings.
And we really need to understand this part. This wasn't just some social system. By 1860, slavery was the entire economic engine of the South. We're talking about an institution built on the backs and the suffering of 4 million people, generating enormous wealth for a small elite. An elite who are absolutely willing to burn the entire nation to the ground to protect it.
So you have this powder keg that's been simmering for decades. What was the spark that finally made it explode? Well, it was the election of one man, a tall, kind of awkward lawyer from Illinois you might have heard of, Abraham Lincoln.
And the reaction to Lincoln's win? It was immediate. It was extreme. I mean, before he even had a chance to be inaugurated, the country just started to shatter. In December of 1860, South Carolina announced it was leaving the Union. By February, boom, 6 more states had followed, and they formed a brand new rival nation, the Confederacy.
And then came April 12th, 1861. That's the day the political crisis became a military one. Confederate forces opened fire on Fort Sumter, a federal fort. And that was it. There was absolutely no turning back. The Civil War had begun.
What came next was 4 years of violence so devastating, so completely brutal, that it scarred the very soul of America in ways we can still feel today. Nobody was prepared for the horror that was about to be unleashed.
You want to know how naive everyone was at the start? Just picture this. At the very first major battle, the Battle of Bull Run, civilians from Washington, D.C. actually came out with picnic baskets, like they were going to watch a sporting event. They thought it would be a quick, glorious little victory. Well, that picnic ended in total panic and chaos. The brutal reality of modern industrial age warfare. It was a terrifying awakening for the whole country.
And the sheer scale of the carnage, it was just unlike anything the country had ever witnessed. Take the Battle of Shiloh. In just 2 days, it produced more American casualties than all of the nation's previous wars combined. And then came Antietam. To this day, the single bloodiest day in all of American history. 23,000 men killed, wounded, or missing in one day. It's a level of slaughter that's almost impossible to wrap your mind around.
But then, out of all this unimaginable slaughter, something started to shift. The very purpose of the war began to change. It started to evolve from just a conflict to hold a nation together into something much, much bigger, a crusade for human freedom.
Okay, so here's the pivot point. January 1st, 1863. With the Emancipation Proclamation, President Lincoln completely changed the game. He raised the stakes. This was no longer just about preserving the Union. Now it was officially, explicitly, a war to end slavery. And this new purpose, it unleashed a powerful new force. Nearly 200,000 African-American men enlisted in the Union Army. Think about that. They were fighting with incredible courage, seizing this chance to fight for their own freedom, for the freedom of their families. Absolutely incredible.
Now, the military climax of the entire war, it all came down to a small town in Pennsylvania you've definitely heard of, Gettysburg.
On the final day, the Confederate General Robert E. Lee ordered a completely impossible frontal assault. We know it today as Pickett's Charge. It was basically a suicide mission. 12,000 men marching across a wide-open field straight into a wall of cannon and rifle fire. In less than an hour, it was over. The heart of the Confederate Army was shattered.
Just 4 months later, Lincoln himself stood on that very same blood-soaked ground, and he somehow gave meaning to all that sacrifice. With just 272 perfect words, he completely redefined what the nation was all about. He framed that horrific cost as the necessary price for a new birth of freedom.
But here's the thing. Even after Gettysburg, the war still wasn't over. Victory was in sight, but it would require one final, absolutely brutal phase. A relentless campaign of what we call total war, designed to completely crush the South into submission.
See, Lincoln had finally found his general in Ulysses S. Grant. Now, Grant was a commander who understood the war's brutal arithmetic. He just would not retreat no matter the cost. So you had Grant's relentless pressure in the north, combined with General William Tecumseh Sherman's utterly devastating march to the sea, and this whole strategy wasn't just about defeating armies anymore. It was about destroying the South's entire will to keep fighting.
And then it all just happened. In the span of a single week, the nation went through this incredible emotional whiplash, its highest triumph and its absolute deepest tragedy. On April 9, 1865, General Lee surrendered. The war was finally over. Just 5 days later, the man who architected that victory, President Lincoln, was assassinated. The nation was whole again, but its leader was gone. But Lincoln's ultimate goal, that was achieved. In December of 1865, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. And with that, the institution that had started the entire war, the institution that had cost 600,000 American lives, was finally and forever abolished.
So, when all the smoke cleared, this is the final accounting. On one side of the ledger, a staggering, almost unimaginable cost. And on the other, a monumental, world-changing outcome. It's a terrible, bloody equation, but it's the one that completely redefined the United States.
The war, of course, left these deep, lasting wounds, many of which are still with us. But after all of that unimaginable suffering, it settled two fundamental questions forever. First, it determined that the United States was one single, indivisible nation. And second, it decreed that here on this soil, no human being could ever again be owned like property. That was the resolution, paid for in blood, and it's what ensured, in Lincoln's own words, that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.